Hey everyone, welcome to the Commander's Brew. I'm Andy.
My name's Sean.
And on this week's show, Riku of Two Reflections. Welcome back. Okay, we're going to lay down what the show is all about for you, for any new listeners.
Since this is the first episode, there's probably a lot of new listeners.
It's probably entirely made up of new listeners.
Yes. We love brewing commander decks for a game called Magic the Gathering. If you found this some other way...
How did you find this?
How? We brew decks for commander, and we build budget decks.
That's right. So we generally like to keep our decks around, between $50 to $100, I'd say, in general.
That seems fair. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to be specifically aiming to hit between 50 and 60. I want to keep it tight.
Yeah, we're going to try and keep it tight.
You won't find $20 cards littering up these deck lists. I will not put a card in that's over $10 unless we're building a specific commander, and that commander happens to be like 11, but that would be the only occasion.
Exactly. And on top of us brewing these budget decks, we will be building them around specific themes or specific cards or specific commanders.
Yeah, you never know what angle we're going to take. This week, Riku of Two Reflections is a specific commander, and every week, Andy and I will take two different angles on the build. I think Riku's a great one to start this podcast off because he has two modes built in.
Exactly. He himself is of Two Reflections, so we just split up the reflections.
Yeah, I'm basically focusing on the spell side of things, copying the spells, the reflections that way.
And I'll be copying the creatures and creating a lot of creature tokens.
Okay, so let's read Riku and see what he does. He's a legendary creature, as all commanders are. He's a human wizard for blue, red, green. That's the teamer colors, +2 colorless. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay blue and red. If you do, copy the spell. You can pick new targets. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, you can pay blue and green and make another copy of that creature.
So I'm going to base mine heavily more around blue-green, perhaps. And Sean's going to probably build his more around
green-red. Turned out to be green-red mostly.
Yeah, so we have two different builds, and we're going to take you through them. And hopefully the aim of this will be to discover some new cards.
Yeah.
Discover some cards that are must-haves for this types of deck that aren't necessarily, exactly like we said, super expensive.
Right. This is an unusual case. This is an exception, but Riku is, in both of our cases, by far the most expensive card in this deck for both of us.
Right.
That's the goal.
So there will be one or two cards in here that are pushing, $5, $6 or so on. But generally, there are very few of them. So.
I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to put this deck together. So, when this podcast is done, I'm going to make a couple of tweaks based on stuff I found didn't work so well, as we will discuss. And you'll see me playing this in the playgroup not too long from now.
Great. I love it. I can't wait to see it. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about what our Riku decks do.
Sure.
Sean went spells. I went creatures. Sean, do you want to start?
Sure. So I decided to take the spell angle of things. There's tons of spells out there that let you make token creatures. So I decided to do a ton of those things. So I'm going to get a lot of little creatures. I'm going to go super wide. A lot of 1/1s, little 2/2s, some 3/3 beasts in many, many multiples. And then I'm going to put some overrun effects on there. Overrun's a card. There's a lot of cards like it. It's like 5 mana total. Green, 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 2. All your creatures get +3/+3 and trample. There's a lot of variations of those. I'm putting those in there. And then if you're copying big spells, what better big spells to copy than red X spells? So you got your Fireballs, Titan's Revenge, Comet Storms, all these spells where I can throw 10 to 15 at someone's face, double it up, maybe get a kill right there.
So it's interesting because aside from the Fireball thing, you also went kind of creatures. But creatures that come from spells.
Right.
Which is very interesting. I would have thought you'd be going with like big damage spells and then like spells that do crazy things like take extra turns and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I figured this way that's a good way because if it takes a while to get going, I got something on the ground to soak up some damage just in case I need it.
Sure. So my deck is, we're going to have some similarities. We are starting with the same card here. Mine are based around enter the battlefield abilities and tokens, of course, because Riku makes tokens of the things that you're playing. That's how he works with the creatures. So a creature enters the battlefield, he makes a token. Hopefully, my tokens will be big dudes that do things as they enter. We're going to try and blink those tokens, or not the tokens rather, but the originals. And you don't have to cast the creatures to get Riku's ability, which is the crazy thing about him, is that he just has to enter the battlefield. So you can, if we're blinking and we're replaying these cards from our hand and stuff, then we're going to be able to make more copies of them and reap those benefits. And then under what the deck does, I just wrote parallel lives because that's
yeah, me too.
We'll get to that, but
yeah.
but it totally wants to make 1 million copies of 1 million tokens.
And just in case some of our listeners don't know, blinking is an effect that comes up a lot of Magic where you can just take a non-token creature, he would pop out of the battlefield, and then pop back into existence.
Yeah.
It's a great way to take advantage of enter or exit the battlefield abilities more than once.
And if you're a Commander player, if you've already been playing Commander, you obviously you know about that stuff.
Yeah.
We briefly talked about what the deck overall wants to do.
Yeah.
Looks like we're both definitely wanting to attack with a lot of creatures, but you have the other addition of using those creatures to cast spells, right?
Riku is a mana-hungry commander.
On both ends.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So a huge part of my deck is ramp cards. I'm going to have a lot of ramp cards in there. Basic ramp cards that work, like your classic cultivate type things or Nissa's exploration, things that will just go find mana from the deck and put it out onto play. But I also found, it also ties into the token theme, a lot of things make Eldrazi spawn tokens.
Right.
So there's a card called Growth Spasm that fetches a land and puts out a spawn token. And then things like Emrakul's Hatcher is a guy who also puts out 3 spawn tokens.
Right.
Kozilek's Predator is in the new Modern Masters set, right?
Yep.
So he makes
a lot
2
of these
spawn
guys
tokens.
are in the new Modern Masters.
Yeah.
Which I will not be buying packs of, but players like us will benefit from those prices of those cards going down.
Absolutely.
So we can still reap the benefits of Modern Masters, just not directly.
Sure. So I'm going to do those 2 things there. I'm going to, all those things, because if I can save the tokens and overrun with them, great. If I need them to cast big, huge spells, that's great too. And if I have enough of them on the board, that just makes the X in my big X burn spells even bigger.
You're doubling up the utility of 0/1 spawn tokens, and when I saw that this is what you did, because just to let you guys know, also Sean and I have played these decks.
Yes, we had a few matches together.
We put them together online. We went one-on-one with them, and we saw what these decks can do, and these decks can do insane things.
Yeah, I think both of them. You mentioned Parallel Lives. I also run Parallel Lives. It's an enchantment. It's kind of like the cheaper doubling season. It's about $5 right now. It's basically reads, if an effect would put 1 or more tokens onto the battlefield under your control, it puts twice that many tokens onto the battlefield instead. So it doubles the amount of tokens.
Yeah.
So one thing I didn't realize until we started playing together is it works on the creature side.
Yeah.
Which just blows it. I thought it was a must include for my deck because I'm just already making a bunch of 1/1 sapperlings, so I'll just make twice as many. But man, making 2 of the big guys.
Yeah, you saw what I was doing.
Yeah,
like, holy, yeah, absolutely. So those are your categories.
Yeah, those are the general gist of the categories. And then, as I mentioned before, those overrun effects. Once I've got a dozen or so creatures, give them all +3/+3 trample. It should be enough to finish somebody off.
Yeah, so I have the same thing. I just have things that will enter the battlefield and then enter the battlefield and make tokens. I don't have a lot of just straight token making like spells. I do have a couple, but since I was focusing on the creature side of things, I was like, what creatures will make tokens when they enter? And so that's kind of the biggest category. Then I have like just some general like big fat win conditions like insurrection and stuff like that, which I think you just need to put in every red deck because it's a cheap card and it'll just win you the game sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're very similar in the categories, I think there. Specifically, what cards in your deck were the ones that were like, these are the all-stars. These are the big boys.
Sure. So one of the most important categories for me is ramp. I think because he needs so much mana, and I think I'll go again. Nissa's Expedition.
Yeah, sorry, I meant to mention ramp. We need ramp in Riku in both of our sides. That is sorcery based, because if you're putting down artifacts, I feel like it's not quite as good because you're not getting any extra benefit out of it. With Riku, at least you might be able to double that up if you draw it later and just really go off with it.
That being said, I do have a fair bit of artifacts.
You've got some artifact ramp in there.
I do have some, like I run all the signets, the 3 signets that fit in this deck, just to help clean up the mana base. Because this is a budget deck, I'm not going to run like expensive $10 fetch lands. I'm certainly not going to run original dual lands.
No, of course.
So any land that gets up to $5, I'm not going to run. So I'm just going to try to cut corners that way. And I think this is a great way to just knock $50 to $100 off the deck price.
Sure.
And it's still totally playable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nissa's Expedition is a great ramp card because it's got Convoke on it. That's a keyword ability that works very well in this deck. Convoke says you can tap creatures and reduce the cost of a spell. And they can count for colorless mana or
Or the color of whatever they are.
The color that they are. So Riku can tap in a convoke sense to be blue, red, or green.
Yeah.
And then all these little... now, one rules interaction, you can't tap a spawn token and sacrifice it as well for a convoke cost. So it doesn't work double that way, but hopefully you want to save the actual land mana for Riku's duplication effect. So if I can tap a lot of spawn tokens and have the effective cost 0 just by tapping creatures, then I can just double it with Riku, still have room left over to cast another spell and double that maybe.
Awesome. I love the way you utilize Convoke in this deck. I think it's now you're getting like 3 times the use out of those spawn tokens.
Sure.
So, you know what I mean? Like you really budgeted for these 0/1 colorless, things, and you've made them like the all-stars of this deck. It's insane.
Yeah, and even something like Kozilek's Predator, he's a 3 and a green. When he enters the battlefield, you get 2 Eldrazi spawn tokens.
Right.
But when Riku copies him, so you'll get 2 original Predators and then 4 spawn tokens.
Right.
So that one creature you're up 4 mana for your next turn. It can just, like I said, pump it into a next spell. Convoke, cheapen those Convoke costs. One card I'm not sure on in the ramp, though, is Harrow. You have to sacrifice a land, but you get to search for 2 basics. But they come into play untapped. So if you copy that, you have to kill 1 land off the board, but you get to go find 4 untapped lands. So it's a good way to get you to your next spell as well. Future ramp, but it doesn't cost you much this turn.
Yeah, because you basically get that other Harrow. I mean, you paid 2 for it, but you don't have to sacrifice that other land.
Right.
So you're getting that one almost like free, basically.
Yeah.
So that's nice. So for me, for my ramp, I had similar things. I've got like Cultivate, and I've got Kadama's Reach, because I'm going to use the spell doubling ability occasionally too, right? Why not?
Yeah.
But I also have creatures that are going to do it, and I've got some ones that are very interesting. I found Farhaven Elf is like pretty much everyone knows about that. I got Wood Elves also. Rattleclaw Mystic is a great card. It's the one from Cons. It basically is the mana elf that taps for Temur colors.
Oh, he's a morph too.
He's a
right?
morph too. Yeah, you can morph him down and then pop him up and get a little extra mana that way. But if you just really you want to just play him as a 2-drop. That will tap, and if you draw them a little later in the game after you've got Riku already out, then you make 2 of them bonus, right?
Right. It's important in this deck not to cast him as a morph, because if you copy a morph, you can't do anything with it.
And you can't flip it over because
Right.
it doesn't have another side.
Right.
Harabaz Druid. I didn't know about this card. Harabaz Druid is 2 mana, so 1 and a green for a human druid ally. This is very important.
Okay.
It's an 0/1. That has tap, add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is the number of allies you control. So even if this is the only ally you have, this is just a mana dork that taps for any color.
Right.
Which is nice. That's okay.
Yeah, because like sometimes if you're copying a spell, you need blue and red, but if you're copying a creature, you need green and blue. So
exactly. So and we don't mind in Commander that this costs 2. Like the knock on this is that it costs 2, and usually you want your mana things to cost 1, right?
Right.
You want your Land of War Elves or whatever. Now, if you also have it after Riku again, if you copy it, now each Harabaz Druid is going to tap for 2 of any color. So you've just ramped yourself 4.
And if you have parallel lives and get 2 copies of the token version, now you have 3, which each tap for 3. That's 9 mana out of that 1 spell.
Exactly. And either way you do it, like if you get this in your opening hand, you play it out on turn 2 to ramp yourself up. If you draw it after Riku, normally you might be like, oh crap, I'm a mana elf, like I don't need this right now. But you need mana in this deck. You need mana in Riku. Every turn, you're happy to see a Harabaz Druid come out. You're like, ooh, it's great, I can copy him.
Yeah.
So it's a great card in here. And because it was so good, and there's another card that I'll talk about again later. So the allies kind of came into play for me a little bit, which I was excited about.
Yeah, which I think once I saw your build and like the different ally synergy you got going on, because yeah, like as you say, one Harabaz Druid on its own is okay at worst, but once you have the few of his ally friends going on and you've copied those guys, so now each one counts as like allies care about how many allies are on the board, and it's not too difficult to get 6, 8,
with
10
Riku
on the board.
Riku is like. I think I accidentally discovered that Riku is an amazing ally commander.
Yeah,
because those are I don't know. I didn't play in. What are they from? Zendikar?
Worldwake and Zendikar.
I didn't play in those days, so I don't I missed these cards. But I think these are the colors for allies. First of all,
There's
white ones too for
and
sure,
black ones,
and they're black ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they went in all colors, but I'm finding a lot of cool ones in these colors, and again we'll talk about that in a bit. Otherwise, my ramp is all based on either sorceries or creatures. The one exception I have is Frontier Siege,
Right.
Which is again a new card, Fate Reforged. So it's three and a green. Choose cons or dragons. Cons at the beginning of each of your main phases. You add green to your mana pool. Dragons, which you're never going to use in this deck, is whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. We don't have a ton of flyers in this deck. We have some, and they're big, and they're good. But generally, you're going to get Frontier Siege out on turn 4. And what it's going to do is not only just ramp you each of your main phases, it's going to provide you that like little extra kick to double your guys, right? It's giving you a green. If you got one blue kicking around at the end, Frontier Siege is your doubler.
Right.
Right? So whenever you play something, that extra Frontier Siege mana hopefully will come in.
And at the very least, if you plan on copying a spell, you just save that red and blue, use those 2 green as your colorless.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
And I do have a lot of green in this deck. It's heavy green. There's double green cost. So Frontier Siege is very, very helpful.
I would agree. I don't run Frontier Siege, but that's a great addition. I hadn't thought of that. But mine is mostly green. So red would be secondary, and then blue comes in third.
What's the next category you got?
Sure. Well, I mean, every deck needs some card draw. Every
Sure.
deck needs some removal, some counter spells if you can make it board wipes. Is there anything in those categories? I don't feel like this deck is reliant on those. I'd love to talk about a couple cards in one or two of those that I think work really well in this deck with the way it goes. Because we get to copy cards under the board wipe category, it's under the new set, Dragons of Tarkir. I just discovered it called Volcanic Vision.
Okay.
It's cost 7, but like I said, in Riku, you're going to get a lot of mana quickly, so 7 is not that much for this deck.
Okay.
Return target instant or sorcery card from the graveyard to your hand. Volcanic Visions deals damage equal to that card's converted mana costs to each creature your opponents control.
Oh, wow.
Then you have to exile Volcanic Vision. But each creature, so it's like a one-sided board wipe. It wipes everybody's creatures but yours. And because they use Convoke, which are naturally higher converted mana costs to begin with.
Sure, yeah.
You know, cards like this, I end up having a lot of cards. And I'm happy to get back a nice ramp spell to just double ramp me again, give me 4 more lands on the board so that I can really go off with my huge burn spells.
And it's great because you might be thinking like, oh, well, I'm returning a Cultivate. And it's like, oh, I'm only doing 3 damage to everything. So like their smaller creatures are going to die.
Sure.
But their 6-drops are still sticking around. But if all you need is pay 2 more to double it, and all of a sudden you're doing 6.
Yeah, you're doing 6.
You're doing 6. That's crazy.
But the way it works though is you don't double. So if you double the spell, you pick a new target card from your graveyard. So you can get 2 spells back from the graveyard. One is 3 converted mana cost. One is 6 converted mana cost. Now you're doing 10 to everything on the board.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking more of doubling the ability, but you double the spell.
Yeah. So you get 2 cards back. That's straight card advantage right there.
Absolutely. So board wipes, I just have like kind of the classics in these colors. So like nothing really special to talk about. I have Savage Twister, which is a card I kind of don't think about very often, but it's a strong card, and I think it would be. I don't know if you have it in your deck, but
I do not.
It's just an X spell. It's green. It's X green red, and it just says Savage Twister deals X damage to each creature. You know, so it's just a big fat X spell. Board wipes. You know, and like we said, this is a mana hungry deck, so you're often going to have like by turn 6 or 7, you're going to have like 10 mana sometimes. So
that'll be enough to take down anybody, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Normally, like I don't love X spells as board wipes, but in this deck it just works really well.
Yeah, and under the categories of card draw or removal or counter spells, everything I have there you could consider basically staple cards. One that might be a little out of that realm is Overwhelming Intellect, which is a 6-mana counter spell that also draws you cards based on the converted mana cost of the spell it countered. It has to be a creature spell. But I figure you're going to want that. Maybe counter someone else's commander, probably draw 5 cards off of it. There's not a ton of card draw in here otherwise, so I'm happy to have it.
It seems there's a lot of setup cost for that one. It seems like, you know, and you could hold it, and sometimes there are turns where people don't cast a creature, but like more often than not, someone's going to be casting a creature, especially if you're holding up 6 mana, which you can do very easily in this deck.
Yeah, I mean, late game, you'll definitely have 6 mana sitting around doing nothing, but it's just...
This is another card where like normally I'd say like this is kind of a bad card.
Right.
Like I wouldn't run it maybe. But in this deck you like the setup and the cost the setup cost where it's like leave all this mana open is very easy to do, especially in your version of the deck where you have all these spawn tokens sitting around and a million mana all the time. Yeah,
I think I'm on the fence about it, I have to admit, but it is nice to have a big casting cost card in my graveyard for those things that want to pull them back and do damage.
Right. For me, this is a fun category for me because you get to take advantage of card draw that isn't good in every deck. So like you get the ETB card draw things like, well, Mole Drifter is obviously always good. But I get to also include Prime Speaker Zagana in this, which I think is a great card.
Ooh.
And I have a whole commander deck based around her, but in case you don't know her, she's two green and 2 blue, so 6 altogether. She's a legendary creature, Merfolk Wizard. She's a 1/1, but Prime Speaker Zagana enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, where X is the greatest power among other creatures you control. And when she enters the battlefield, you draw cards equal to her power. So you'll always, if you have nothing else, you'll draw 1 card, which sucks, for sure. But if you have even just like a 3-power creature out there, which you'll see is pretty easy to get in this deck, you're drawing 4, and then if you're going to copy her, you're going to draw 8. In the legendary rule, you won't get to keep both things, but you will still get her enter the battlefield ability.
Hey man, I just want it for the cards anyway.
You just want it for the card draw anyway, so she works. I find she works really well in here. The other one that I'm happy I get to use. Well, I'll say 2 things, actually. Oh, no, I'll say 3 because I love these cards. Seagate Loremaster is
another ally, if I'm not mistaken.
Another ally, exactly. It's 5 for a 1/3 Merfolk Wizard ally. Draw a card for each ally you control. So same thing with the mana dork. You tap him, you're going to draw a card if he's the only thing.
If he's the only thing, he's 1 card draw.
If you Riku'd him and you doubled him up, you're going to draw 2 cards every time you tap him. And
each guy is 2, though.
Exactly.
So you could potentially draw 4 every turn if you want.
Then he turns into 4. And, of course, if you parallel lives him or if you just blinked him and copied him again, this guy's just going to be able to draw you 5-6 cards sometimes.
You got Tabares Druids lying around. You got
exactly
2 or 3 of the guys, each of them potentially drawn 5 or 6 cards at a time. You're going to have to watch out you don't deck yourself just from drawing too many cards.
It was very important for me that these allies, though, also just work by themselves.
Of course.
Like,
good.
it's just all bonus if you have another ally out, but really these guys need to be good by themselves because there are a bunch of allies that's like, well, I need a lot of allies for this to be good. Whereas, like, this one is good on his own. The mana one is good on their own.
If I recall correctly, there's a lot of allies who add +1/+1 counters to themselves.
Yeah.
So they, would become gigantic monsters to deal with. But in Commander games, if you must be familiar by now that just having a big, dumb dude isn't going to get the job done.
Exactly, yeah. You're just going to get chumped by a token deck or something else. Okay.
Similar to Prime Speaker Zagana, I want to bring up, so
Sure.
you mentioned that, like, we're copying legendary creatures, which you can't keep 2 of them, but there is a little bit of a benefit to that anyway.
Yeah.
I've got 1 card in my deck, Wart the Raid Mother, legendary creature, Goblin Shaman. When Wart the Raid Mother enters the battlefield, you get 2 red and green Goblin tokens. But the key thing about her is that every spell that you cast has Conspire. Every green and red spell, I should say,
right,
which is most of them in this deck, means tap 2 creatures that share a color with it, and you get to copy it. So I'm hoping to ride Riku's back on this one. So if you copy her, you get 4 of those little goblins, not 2 of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not nearly as good as copying your guy there, but having extra goblins. Now, I should point out that you can't conspire more than once per spell. You can't just conspire as many times as you
right, yeah. Seems like that's almost like a second commander for you there.
I'm going to cast like a 10-point fireball. Riku's going to copy it once. Wart the Raid Mother is going to copy it once.
Yeah.
I can either finish 1 person off completely or maybe spread it out and finish 2 or 3 people off at once.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds pretty broken and terrible for the other players. Very briefly also, I was going to say I always run Sphinx of Uthun in blue decks because I love it. It's an the battlefield ability. It's basically Fact or Fiction stapled onto a 5/6 flyer that costs 7. If you know what Fact or Fiction is, it's basically when he enters the battlefield, reveal top 5 cards of your library, and opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other in your graveyard. So you're going to draw probably 2 or 3 cards off of this guy every turn, every time he enters the battlefield. And of course, with Riku, we're just copying him, we're blinking him, we're doing all kinds of stuff.
Andy pulled this on me in one of our test matches, and I had to make that awful choice of what amazing pile to give him twice.
Yeah, exactly. You really get to stick it to your opponents.
Oh, I love it.
And then I included Skull Clamp, and Skull Clamp is obviously like a commander staple. It's staple in whatever it's allowed to be played in, kind of. It's good in this deck because I'm running a lot of 1/1 creatures that when they come in, they put other tokens out in the battlefield, and we'll get to it, but specifically I'm running the splicers that are in these colors.
Oh, yes.
I'm running the green splicers and the blue splicers, and we'll talk about them in a later thing, but I just want to let you know that that's why Skull Clamp is in there, and there's enough of them in this deck that it makes sense with Skull Clamp. And Mana Dorks, too. I've got, like, you can hit your Farhaven Elf or one of your Harabaz Druids later in the game when you don't need it anymore.
So maybe this is a good time to talk about, our decks, we've kind of covered all the basic categories that most Commander decks will have.
Right.
But let's talk about some divergent categories. My deck does not necessarily focus on enter the battlefield abilities, but I
Right.
know your deck does. So why don't we
Certainly.
go over a few cards that are key ETB cards?
Okay, so some key ETB cards for me. I definitely mentioned one of them, which is the Sphinx.
Yeah.
It's a big, fat flyer. It's a win condition, as well as being a card draw engine and, this great enter the battlefield guy. Bogarden Hellkite I included in here.
Ooh.
Which is, again, the same thing, a big, splashy monster. It costs a lot. Like we said, in this deck, you're going to have a lot of mana out. Bogarden Hellkite, for those of you not familiar with it, is an 8-mana dragon. It's 6 and 2 red, 5/5. It has flash, which I always forget that this creature has flash. And it has flying. When Bogarden Hellkite enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players.
And then copied basically reads 10 any way you choose.
Exactly. So that's just 10 damage. And it kind of sounds like that's good, but not great. It is better than you think in Commander. Because this guy can just come in, deal 5 damage to someone's face if you want, and then swing in for 5, because it's going to flash in on someone's end step, right? If you're going to double it up, that's 10, then you're laughing.
My deck is not uncommon for me to have a ton of 1/1s out there.
Yeah.
He can nuke 10 of my spawn tokens that I was planning on just making a juicy fireball with.
Yeah, and you can just take out, you have a flyer. You have a big 5/5 flyer, like a demon or something sitting out there.
Not anymore.
Yeah, takes care of that guy. Now I'm free to attack in the air. He's definitely one of the key enter the battlefield guys.
Nice.
Bogarden Hellkite is super cheap because it just got reprinted in the Commander.
Ooh, the big red one.
Yeah, they got
ready.
Yeah, so Bogarden Hellkites now are like $1, maybe even less.
Great.
It says here 90 cents, so that's great.
Wizards making it great for us Commander players.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great time to play Commander.
Now, on the other side of things, on a little bit more expensive, we've got Avenger of Zendikar, which is like a $4 to $5 card. That's actually gone down a lot because it was reprinted in the 2013 Commander set.
Okay.
But it's really great. Avenger of Zendikar is a 7-mana, 5 and 2 green, 5/5 again. When he enters the battlefield, you put the number of 01 green plant creature tokens onto the battlefield for each land you control.
Oh my god.
And he has landfall. Whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, you may put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature you control. So, Sean, this is actually probably good for your deck, too.
We have a segment we're going to do later called Cards We Missed in Our Deck, and I'm adding this to that section right now.
Now, this is one of the more expensive cards I have in here. I don't expect everyone to just go buy 1,000,000 Avengers Zendikars, but at $4, I'll put 2-3 cards that are worth that much in a deck. I'll buy a couple like that. So I'm okay with Avengers Zendikar, and it's just so good in this deck that you want.
Yeah, like I said, with all these ramp cards putting extra lands out on the battlefield, it probably is not unreasonable for you to be dropping 7 or 8 plant tokens. Copy that guy.
Yeah.
You're doing 14, 16 plant tokens.
I think I had it out. I played on Forge. Which I'm sure we'll talk about Forge at some point in this podcast lifespan. But I had 2 Avenger Zendikars out. They each made like 11 plant tokens or something. So I had 22 plant tokens. Then you play Explosive Vegetation doubled with Riku. That's 4 lands that come out, and so that everything now has 4. Like just gets mad, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to overrun those plans. I don't even need to do that extra
You don't even
step.
need to do that.
I'll just overrun all those guys.
So it's pretty much an all-star. And one that's a little less splashy that I still like a lot is one of these other allies, Turn Timber Ranger. So Turn Timber Ranger is 5-mana 2/2, which is like kind of not great, but it's an Elf Scout ally, and it's 3 and 2 green. Whenever Turn Timber Ranger or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on Turn Timber Ranger. So you are going to do that.
Yeah.
And so you will. So it ends up being a 3/3 with a 2/2 little friend. So you get 5 for your 5. With Riku, you're going to double it up. And when you double it up with Riku, they each see each other come in, right? You mentioned that? That's how the rules work? Well, actually, you know what? It doesn't matter. Riku enters the battlefield, then you make the copy. So what's going to happen is you're going to get your Ranger and your Wolf.
Yeah.
Then this turn Timber Ranger will enter the battlefield.
See another ally. So he'll make a wolf. The first turn Timber will see another ally join, so he'll make another wolf.
Yeah.
So you end up with 3 wolves. One guy is a little bit bigger than the other guy, who's also a little bit bigger.
Right. And that will get crazy once you have Parallel Lives out.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. And
it gets really crazy because then you're making double the wolf creature tokens
Yeah.
as well as double the Turn Timber Rangers.
I'm not smart enough to do the math right now,
Yeah,
but this
me
is
neither.
similar to the math we've been doing with those extra card draw guys or those mana guys.
Yes.
Like, it gets ugly real fast.
And
And that's a theme of that both of the in every match we played, most of them were very one-sided,
Yeah.
and it really depended on who got like a nice juicy ramp early and just started doing these ridiculous things
Yeah.
for very little mana.
Yeah, like we said, also, like if you happen to have your Hairbaz Druid out before this,
Oof.
then that's just another ally, and you're going to see more and more allies coming in, and it just gets insane.
Great. Now, you also mentioned that another category that makes your deck work is you focus on some blink effects. So what kind of blink effects are you running that make this thing go?
Right. Okay, so I've got the classics. I've got Deadeye Navigator,
Yeah, great. Classic.
which, like, arguably should maybe be banned in the format, a lot of people will say.
Well, we say that because it is difficult to combat because he can blink himself or the thing he's soul bonded to. Soul bonded is a thing that when another creature enters the battlefield, they can be soul bonded, and he grants his ability to his soul bonded creature.
Yeah.
But this guy, if you target him with anything, he'll just blink himself out of the way, and when he lands back on the board, he's re-soul bonded, so you haven't really gained anything.
Yeah. It's one of the blue to blink things. You exile them, and then they return. The thing about Deadeye Navigator that I'm not sure, I think more experienced Magic players know this, and I only recently learned it, and newer players might not know, is that all you need, really, is for a person with Deadeye Navigator to activate its ability, and you to have an instant speed removal. What happens is Deadeye Navigator will blink either himself or
The other guy.
the other thing.
Yeah.
When that other thing, let's say, enters the battlefield, the Soul Bond trigger goes on the stack. And if you can react to the Soul Bond trigger, so if you have, like, let's just say you have Doomblade.
Right.
You can Doomblade Deadeye Navigator in response to the Soul Bond trigger, and he cannot blink anything out of the way.
So it doesn't sound so bad then.
So it doesn't sound so bad. I think the problem is that, like, sometimes people will use Deadeye Navigator as protection, but then I think that's fair then. Then it's like, but then all it needs is for you and me to have something, which I know is kind of a lot. I just don't think it's, like, as broken as everyone says.
There's a lot of brutal cards in this game that get broken when you do fun things, but that's why we play Commander, because we want to put these cards together to do crazy things with them. Riku, by his very nature, is kind of broken, but that's what makes him so fun.
Exactly. So like, I agree that Deadeye Navigator is very, very powerful.
Sure.
But I'm not sure if it should be banned. But anyways,
do you
that's
have any
a
other
discussion for
blinkers
later.
in there?
My other blinker that I don't see anyone ever playing except for, like, me and you.
Yeah.
I think is Nephalia Smuggler.
Yeah. It's like
mini Deadeye Navigator, like worse Deadeye Navigator for sure. He's a one drop, 1 blue, and he's a 1/1, and he has the ability. He's a human rogue, which is not relevant at all, and he has the ability of pay 3 and a blue and tap him, and you get to blink something. So exile another target creature.
Right.
Another target creature. He can't save himself this way, which is very relevant.
Okay.
So he's, again, just a worse version.
So his 4 mana plus the 2 that you're inevitably going to spend with Riku to double it.
Yeah.
So you're going to blink any other non-token creature allies, perhaps, and just add the ally count even greater on the board?
One of the splicers. That's the third thing I want to talk about.
The
blinking is the splicers. And basically, all the splicers, I won't go into each one of them or anything. They each are 1/1s for anywhere from 4 to 7 mana. When they enter the battlefield, they'll put a 3/3 golem,
a colorless golem,
token out onto the battlefield. And then the splicer will grant a golem an ability. So Wing Splicer gives them flying.
All golems.
Because all golems
So
flying.
they work very well in tandem with each other.
Golem creatures I control. So at least that's good. And then there's one that gives them trample. And then there's the big one, the one that costs 7, makes 2 golems, so, like, you get to double up on it.
We played a little practice match earlier. Andy had Parallel Lives out.
Yeah, with Parallel Lives, these guys just go crazy.
And he copied
Maul
Splicer, and you get the original Maul Splicer who wants to make 2 3/3 golems. Then you got Riku's copy who wants to make another 2 golems. But that copy is a token, so Parallel Lives will copy it into a third one that wants 2 more tokens. But each of those guys making 2 golems is doubled.
4. Yeah.
So he hit the board with like 20 power and toughness.
Yeah, you get 12 golems and 3 splicers.
Yeah, and that was turn 6 or 7. So like I couldn't come back. This is what I mean. Like these decks are fun to play because something huge is going to happen real soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about you? What about you over there?
We already talked about ramp. I think that's a key component to get yourself up to the point where you can just start doing these massive things. And as I said, I'll get a lot of Eldrazi spawn tokens. So I'm running Kozilek's Predator, Emrakul's Hatcher, Nest Invader, each to get 1, 2, and 3 0/1 spawn tokens going on.
Right.
Just a great card in here. One of the most expensive cards in my deck. He's in about $5 or $6. It's called Mykolov. He costs 3 green, and he's 4/4, but he has Devour 2. And what Devour 2 means is, as he enters the battlefield, you sacrifice any number of creatures, and each one gives him 2 +1/+1 counters. That's the Devour 2 part.
Right.
And at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a 1/1 token Saproling creature card into play for each +1/+1 counter on Mykolov. So you devour 3 or 4 guys, you've got 6 to 10 +1/+1 counters on them. You're making that many 1/1 Saprolings every turn. This is a way to go wide in no time.
This is like your version of Avenger of Zendikar, kind of.
Yeah, basically.
It wouldn't be as good in my deck because the Devour isn't quite as relevant for me, but I could still run it.
Sure.
It could still be good.
Sure.
But for you, it really makes sense in this one.
Yeah, because I'm going to overrun with them, so I want to go as wide as possible. There's a great Convoke spell. It's called Feral Incarnation. It costs 9 total, but you can convoke, and that means tapping creatures to count for their mana, and you get to put 3/3 green beast tokens out of there.
Yeah.
So if I can tap a bunch of creatures, that spell could end up being free for me, and then I just spend the red and the blue to have Riku double it and get my 3/3 beasts out on the table.
And then not to mention if you have parallel lives, and that's
Sure.
12, and
Yeah.
you're laughing.
Yeah, laughing. And so then I've got 5 overrun effects. I think this is the key. This is how I'm going to win most of the games. Obviously, the granddaddy of them, the one that it was named after, Overrun, that's the one that gives them +3/+3 in trample. I've got Overwhelming Stampede that gives them +X/+X, where X is the largest power. Now, a lot of my cards don't get above 3 power anyway, but the neat thing about that spell is that when you copy it, it looks at the new highest power for the copy. Let's say I've got a 3/3 beast. The first one will give 3, making him a 6/6, but the next one will give 6. So a total of 9. I've got Tromp the Domains, which counts how many basic land types. I'm always going to have a forest, island, and a mountain, so that's basically the same. And
how much does Tromp cost? Like,
Tromp the Domains costs a little bit more. It's going to cost a total of 6 green +5.
right, okay, so all right. So it costs like 1 more than Overrun, but it is slightly easier to cast in that it only has 1 green mana symbol.
Right. And then there's always that outside chance. If one guy at the table's running that card that turns
Urborg
that turns all lands into swamps, then I'm getting 4 off of this thing. That's a bit of a pipe dream.
that's a bit of a long shot, but hey, it happens.
It could happen, right?
It happens.
And then there's one that I didn't really think about before. It's Triumph of the Hordes. It only gives everyone +1/+1 in trample, but also infect. So I only need to hit for 10.
Wow,
so
that's crazy.
Which is crazy. So if I'm doubling it, everyone's gets +2/+2 and infect. But realistically, I won't double that. Hopefully I've got enough mana to double a big one and then just tack on the infect on top.
You know what's crazy is that I never saw you in our games. I never saw you get parallel lives out.
No, I swear it's in
I had
there.
it out like half the time,
Right.
which is funny. But you never got it out, but you still had a couple of games where you had like swarms of 01 Eldrazi spawn tokens, and you did it a lot off of doubling up like the Emrakul's Hatcher and stuff like that. And so you had Awakening Zone, I know, which was
Awakening Zone. Yeah, it's a
huge
enchantment that drops 1 out every turn. That little extra mana boost, man, it really helped.
Yeah, it was very easy. I was gonna say for Overwhelming Stampede, I remember you played it in one of the games. And I was like, Overwhelming Stampede. I was like, that's not going to do anything. Big deal. I'm living through this, no problem. And I think it was only pumping him 3. I think it was like a regular overrun. And I was like, okay, I can block enough guys that this is fine. And then it's doubled, and I was like, oh yeah, now it's +6 on top of that. So it's +9 altogether.
And if I've got Wart the Raid Mother, then I can convoke that. Then I can
conspire it.
You're right. Sorry, I always mix those twos up.
Yeah.
If I can conspire it, then I'm doubling it again. Like it's exponential, that card.
It works surprisingly well for a card that I think is worse than Overrun, but in here I think it's better.
I think so. If you plan on doubling it, it's absolutely better.
Yeah.
And then I just want to talk for a second. So then a big part of this deck is big X burn spells. A lot of ones you might expect. I've got Fireball. I've got Comet Storm, recently reprinted in Modern Masters 2015.
To many people's chagrin.
Well, but that just means it's going to be real cheap if you want to get one. Like $1 at most.
That's where we benefit. Again, we benefit.
Devil's Play, so you can flash back from the graveyard. One that I just discovered, Titan's Revenge. It's basically like a Fireball for an extra red, but I mean, you can't divide it up, but you get to clash with your opponent, which I didn't realize. You know, if you win the clash, you get it back in your hands. I got a lot of expensive cards in this deck, a lot of 6 mana, 7 mana, 8 mana casting cost things, so there's a good chance I'll win that clash and just get to cast this doubled again next turn.
It's just a bonus. The clash is just all gravy.
Worst case scenario, I look at the card, I lose the clash, and I'm like, well, I don't want this, so I get to put it on the bottom of my deck and get something better next time. If I've copied it, we're going to clash twice, so I get a little bit more card selection that way, but I don't get to get it back to my hand off with a copy.
You can't put the non-existent card into your hand. That's why. Because it specifically says put the card into your hand.
Oh, and one more overrun effect that I do have in here that I think I'm going to count as that is a Beastmaster Ascension. It's an enchantment that when you attack, you get a counter on it, and when you have 7 counters, everyone gets +5/+5. But I'm just going to play that when I have 7 creatures on the board, so I can activate it in one swing.
So +5/+5, huge ability, and it's a 3 mana enchantment, I believe. So very easy to drop. Also came out in the green commander decks from this year, so very readily available.
So that's a rundown of all the major categories of my deck. That's kind of what I'm trying to do and how I'm going to accomplish it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, we hit the ETB, we hit the tokens. So looking at these cards, we didn't go through everything. Like, obviously, we've got stuff like Soul Ring. We've got, I have Soul Ring.
Yeah, I'm not running Soul Ring.
You're not running it, but like you could and very easily. And we've got like Conjurer's Closet, which is just an artifact that will blink something on your end step. I can do Riku's ability on my end step every turn also. This is just kind of automatic ETB includes. What are some of the cards that you considered absolute must-haves for the strategies you've chosen?
Sure. So
we might have mentioned a couple of these already.
Yeah, I think they all came up, but like definitely Parallel Lives.
Of course.
Both of our decks. This deck just is a monster in this. If you're going to copy a creature, now you get 3 of them. The original plus the copy plus that extra token. Because I'm running so many token generating things, and a lot of those tokens count as ramp as well, which is key, I'm getting double of those. Like, this card is A++.
It made me want, and I did, search for tutor cards in these colors that could find an enchantment, and unfortunately there are none. That tutoring for enchantments is purely a white thing, I found out while doing this. So, you're not going to have Parallel Lives every game, so like don't rely on it. I know we're bringing it up a lot because that's when things really go crazy, is when you have it out. But if you get it, it's nuts. Doubling Season is like a $30 card, and I'm not going to buy it.
No.
If I ever made this
deck.
No,
Doubling Season would be great in this deck.
It would be amazing. It would be just another version of Parallel Lives, really.
It's against the mandate of this podcast to put a card that expensive in the deck.
Exactly.
If you own a Doubling Season, by all means.
Go to town.
Yeah.
Of course, put it in, obviously. We're not going to tell you to go buy one because it's just too damn expensive.
So then let's talk about some surprises, some big-time overachievers. We're kind of already in that category.
For sure.
Like just surprisingly good in this deck, or cards you didn't think would be good and turn out to be great.
Yeah. I already mentioned the Allies, of course. I mentioned the Splicers. These are cards that are not always good, but in this deck they really overachieve, and they do things that is a minimal effect maybe in a normal deck, but Riku really, really sets them off. So aside from those, I have Strionic Resonator.
Ooh.
Which is a great card from M14. Strionic Resonator is a 2-mana artifact. You probably know this one. It's 2 and tap, copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Riku's ability is a triggered ability.
This is just another Riku trigger. And it's colorless, though, so you can sink any amount of mana into this. So if you've copied one of your creatures, you can just copy it again.
Very nice.
This is basically Parallel Lives Junior. Because you have to tap it and pay for it, it's obviously not as good, but like if I'm going to put out another Splicer, that's essentially making another copy of it with Parallel Lives, so it's great.
Definitely a card I missed putting in this deck, but it adds another backup to Parallel Lives that isn't Doubling Season.
Exactly. And it's very cheap. It's 82 cents medium on TCG. You can get it as low as 35 cents. I'm not a card speculator finance-wise, and neither are you.
Nope.
But this is a card we both are like, why isn't this more money?
Yeah, I mean,
this card is broken in every deck it's in, basically.
It is totally unique ability that nothing else does.
I guess the tapping holds it back a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what we were thinking. We're like, because Rings of Bright Hearth is a very similar card, but it's with activated abilities, but you don't have to tap it.
Right.
So this one, the tapping kind of holds it back, I guess. But anyways, it's still awesome in this deck. Very, very good.
One overachiever that I want to put out in this deck is because I have so many X red spells that are going to do some things. I think I have a total of 7 that are going to do some kind of X spell. So there's a very good chance I've got one online. I've got one with flashback, so if it's in the graveyard, I can use it again. As I said, Titan's Revenge can come back into my hand. Fire Servant is a creature who, when he's on the board, anytime you cast a red instant or sorcery spell that does damage, it does double that damage. If you've got him copied with Riku, the first Fire Servant doubles your big fireball. The second one makes it a ×4. And if you had Parallel Lives out and had a third one out there, it would be a ×8 total.
This is your other Parallel Lives, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Right? Like,
yeah.
It's Parallel Lives for your sorcery spells, which is...
I also did throw in Increasing Vengeance, which is a very inexpensive instant. 2 red to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. So, he's like a one-shot extra Riku activation on a spell,
Sure, yeah.
And it's got flashback for 5, which is more expensive, but cost doesn't usually seem to be an issue. The idea is if I need to go with like one giant fireball, this is how I'm going to get it up to speed.
You just made me think of something maybe I should have said earlier, but like you have what, like 15 ramp cards in this deck or something?
Let me give the count here.
13 or something like that. I have 10, which I think is like even a lot, but you even have more. But that's how mana hungry this
15. I've got 15 ramp spells. That includes all the creatures that make Eldrazi spawn. That includes
which are doubling up. So that's not just ramping, but that is still a source of ramp, right?
Yeah, it's a source of ramp, but it also I can overrun those guys if I need to. I got a ton because that's when it's fun, right? This deck is fun when you're casting enormous spells, copying them once, twice, 3 times.
So in essence, like ramp cards are overachievers in this deck because they're really giving you even more benefit, I think, than you would get just from casting one big dude, right?
Absolutely.
Like I've got a Mael, the anima.
Who knows?
Deck, and a ton of ramp in there as well. I ramp up to one big dude or 2 big dudes, a 15/15, right? World Spine Worm. Whereas we're doing it and you're like getting 20/01 Eldrazi spawns and then casting a spell that can do 40 damage. That's better.
Yeah,
you're gonna kill
way
a person
better.
with that, right?
I want to highlight Gelatinous Genesis. XX green.
Yep.
Put X ooze tokens onto the battlefield that are power and toughness are XX. The more mana you sink into that thing, the more bigger things you get. So I think at 3 mana, which is the minimum, I guess 1 mana to get is 0/0/0. But like you're getting 1/1/1 for 3, not so big. But once you get up to 7 or 9 mana, you're getting 4/4/4s or 5/5/5s. Double that with Riku.
You mentioned Gelatinous Genesis. There's a card. Anyways, it basically has Gelatinous Genesis on it as monstrous. I can't remember the name of it exactly.
Oh, I gotta look this up.
I'll see it in a second. But it's great because in this, you can cast that guy, double him with Riku, and then you've got 2 Gelatinous Genesises on 2 creatures.
Ready to monstrous whenever you need.
Exactly. We're not at the section where it's cards you may have missed. But
yeah.
You just made me think of that one.
That sounds like a good... Why don't we segue now to like cards that you may have missed, that you didn't think about the first time or something like that?
Sure, yeah. What we did was we looked at each other's deck lists.
Yep.
And we kind of just chatted about it before we started recording.
Yeah, so I wish I thought of your Stronic Resonator, Avenger of Zendikar. That's great. And one that I think is a huge miss for me that you discovered was called Fresh Meat.
Yeah.
It's an instant for 3 and a green. Put a 3/3 green beast token into the battlefield for each creature put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. I'm going to be sacking spawn tokens all over the place.
We were talking about this because I was like, I don't know what to categorize this card as. I guess it's a utility card that kind of helps me with board wipes, and it's a token maker. And I was like, Sean, you could probably use it too because you've got a lot of little guys. And then you're like, yeah, and all my little guys sacrifice themselves to pay for the spell to pay for the Fresh Meat spell. So Fresh Meat is like doubly useful in your deck.
Oh my goodness.
Insane.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I am immediately adding it to the deck list.
Here's the thing. I have my Tristani deck. I took Fresh Meat out of it a long time ago because I was like, oh, I have a bunch of tokens. They don't go to the graveyard. Yes, they do. Tokens go to the graveyard briefly. So this specifically even says if a token even enters the graveyard, which it does.
For each creature, it doesn't have to be non-token.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So Fresh Meat works
very well.
Insanely for you. So you don't even have to wait for the board wipe. You just do it.
Yeah. I'm going to be proactive with it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to Fresh Meat myself.
Turn all your O1s into 3/3s and go nuts with it. Yeah, you want to Fresh Meat yourself. Yeah. I had something else you may have missed. 2 spell doublers that I see a lot of, and they're both blue. One's Echo Mage.
Oh,
the other's Melita Charlatan. Melita Charlatan is, I think it's like a 2/2, maybe a 2/3, and you pay 2 and a blue and tap them to copy target spell. Echo Mage it's a leveler. You level them up, and then you can pay like 2 and a blue or something, or 1 and a blue and copy.
Well, the great thing about Echo Mage is if he's leveled up to his maximum, you get to copy things twice.
Exactly.
As we know, this deck is fun when you're copying giant spells.
Because Riku is a degenerate when it comes to this type of stuff. You can make 2 Echo Mages. You can make 2
Oh boy.
Melita Charlatans. So now you're paying 6. Like, it's more than Riku, but Riku only lets you do it once, right? But then you can double that. Like, then you're just doubling. I guess it might sort of become win more at some point. But if you cast that 10 mana fireball and then you use the rest of it to just go, okay, copy it like 8 times, like you're dead. Everyone's dead, Anyways,
that's pretty good.
Something to think about. Again, may not fully work because you do have the Conspire guy in there. It's not like you missed the mechanic altogether or anything. Did you have any cards that I missed that you thought I missed?
I just thought of it while we were talking. You were talking about another way to look for enchantments.
Yeah.
Although this can't tutor directly for it, but since we're dealing with a lot of mana, Genesis Hydra, X green.
Sure.
You get to look at the top X cards and put 1 non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less onto the battlefield. Now, you can't copy a Genesis Hydra because he won't have any 1/1 counters on it, so you won't get to do this effect twice. But if you got a slot, and you need something to do with all that mana, you might as well hopefully look for that Parallel Lives.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that sounds decent.
And anything you find with it, if you hold back a green or a blue, any creature that you put into the battlefield, you will get to copy as it enters.
Exactly. You can copy the free one that you cast if it does in fact hit a creature.
And you don't have to cast the creature as long as it enters the battlefield, which.
My deck has like 35, 40 creatures. Like, it's very creature heavy.
Oh yeah, I would expect to cast a Genesis Hydra for no less than 8.
Yeah, and be able to hit a big creature off of it,
which
is great. Cards that we're not sure about in the deck, we included them in the list, but maybe upon playing, we're like, this isn't quite as good as I thought it might be. The only one that kind of let me down, oddly enough, is Progenitor Mimic, which is a great card.
Very powerful card.
I look at it and I go, this is a broken card in Riku. It's 4 and Simic, green and a blue, for a 0/0, it's a shapeshifter, and you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it gains at the beginning of your upkeep. If this creature isn't a token, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of this creature. So it's a big clone, 6 mana clone, but it will make a copy that is also a clone of the thing you cloned to begin with. So if I put Progenitor Mimic out and I copy, an acidic slime, every turn this is going to make a new acidic slime, and I'm going to be able to get that enter the battlefield trigger off of it. Now, that's great. On its own, it is still good. I'm not saying Progenitor Mimic isn't good, but I was expecting to be able to like copy, make a million copies of Progenitor Mimic with Riku, and then they all are spitting them out. But actually how it works is because Riku makes a token that's a copy, Progenitor Mimic specifically says, if it isn't a token, put a token onto the battlefield. So those additional copies you make with Riku are not going to be creating their own thing. So
right. So you only get the original Progenitor Mimic twice if it's Parallel Lives.
Sure. With Parallel Lives, this card is still insane.
Like, how many times has Parallel Lives come up that just amps this deck into the stratosphere?
I think Progenitor Mimic is still worth having in the deck. I just don't think it's going to be as crazy as it kind of seems like it would be.
A couple that I'm not 100% sure on. As you know, like, I'm looking to do giant X spells. So I put Roisin Meanderer, who's a legendary creature. She costs 4 to cast, and you can tap her to add 4 to your mana pool, but that 4 can only be spent on spells that have X.
4 colorless, right?
4 colorless for anything for X. But I've got plenty of X's, but I'm already at the point where, like, if I add her to the spell, it doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already at the point where I'm casting fireballs at 10 to 15, so like another 4 is almost negligible. I mean, it could be the line between a kill or a not kill on someone.
Sure.
But I think I'd rather put in an Avenger of Zendikar or some fresh meat, like fresh meat for sure.
Yeah, definitely. You got that out in a game that we played, and
I didn't have an X-Spell that game.
Yeah, so then she's just a 4/4 creature that you can't even make 2 of because she's legendary.
Right. Another one of a similar vein is Goblin Electromancer. It makes all your instants and sorceries 1 cheaper. So I thought, that'd be just save a bit of mana here, maybe do 2 in a turn. But again, with the amount of mana we're dealing with, the 1 savings is too negligible.
You don't even need to save that 1.
No,
right?
It really doesn't make much of a difference.
Not worth the card slot.
Nope. I'll put in a Strionic Resonator.
The other thing with Roisin Meanderer, I'll just say from like a card standpoint, that card really bugs me because legendary creatures, for the most part, now I know not everyone, but they'll have like a name because they're a legendary creature. They're a specific person. Prime Speaker Zagana, Riku of 2 Reflections. Roisin Meanderer is just, to me, the name of a normal creature. It's the name of a creature that you're describing what the creature does.
Yeah, and this creature is from Roisin.
And she's just a Meanderer. That's not legendary.
Yeah,
Why is that legendary?
Just make it Roisin the Meanderer.
Yeah.
And then we're solved.
Yeah, and then we're done. Then we're cool with it. She meanders. She just kind of wanders around. adding mana to things.
Also not a very legendary ability.
No, not really, right? And she doesn't look very legendary. She looks kind of like a homeless lady. Anyways. Yeah, okay, so now what do we have here? We have, cards we discovered. We played 1v1, so my Decimate wasn't very good.
Yeah, hard to find all the targets for it.
But, you're not playing these 1v1. We built them for multiplayer.
Yeah, I've said it before, but Volcanic Vision from Dragons, returning its target instant or sorcery, and then board wiping for the value.
That's sweet.
I like that one.
Okay, so cards you discovered. So, and I talked about it also. I discovered these allies, which work really well with Riku, and I was very, very pleased with them. Turn Timber Ranger. It's probably only good in a deck like this. It's probably maybe even only good in this specific deck, but I like that card a bunch now.
Yeah, and then I want to add to that Sprout Swarm. It's a Convoke spell that's 1 and a green. It's an instant, but it's got buyback of 3, and it puts a 1/1 green Sapperling. So for 5 mana, you can put a 1/1 green Sapperling, and then do it again. But it has Convoke, so if you can tap 5 creatures, you just get that one for free, and he can convoke the next spell you cast. So at the end of a turn, if you've got a dozen creatures lying around, that's 2 free Sapperlings.
Yeah.
Didn't even spend a card on it.
Very good.
Very good.
We'll actually post links to these decks.
Absolutely.
In the show notes. You'll be able to go check them out, see what else we included. There's a lot of cards we didn't even really talk about in here.
For sure.
I have a Zealous Conscripts in here. You're going to be able to get 2 of those. You're going to be able to go off with that. Utvara Hellkite is one of the more expensive cards I included, which is just, again, busted in this deck. It's incredible. But we didn't talk much about it. Hornet Queen, another crazy good card in this deck.
Would be great in my version, too, all those little Hornets tokens.
So our 2 decks actually ended up being sort of similar, but still using the 2 different abilities that we wanted. Yours still does focus more on spells. Mine is still, for sure, only focused on creatures.
That brings us to the end of our first ever episode of Commander's Brew.
You can find this deck on tappedout.net.
Yes, we will be posting every deck for every episode we do of this on tappedout.net under the username Commander's Brew.
That's right, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Commander's Brew.
Or send us an email, commandersbrew@gmail.com.
That's right. Of course, tweet at us your deck ideas and stuff, and if you've taken one of ours and played with it, great. Let us know how it went, or if you have an idea that we should do on a future podcast, we would love to hear from you.
Throw us some ideas. We're happy to take ideas. If you want to challenge us to try to brew 2 different decks based on some kind of card, we'll take those suggestions.
Also, please rate us on iTunes. Give us 5 stars. Leave a review there. That really helps us out.
Yeah, that's the kindest thing you can do for us, and tell your friends.
Okay, great. So until next week, guys, thanks for joining us.